Yes, here we are back with another FMBE video, or commonly known as block display or block entity video, and this is part 3. And the reason why I've posted a part 3 is because a lot of y'all actually wanted another part where I kind of summarize what I've been talking about in part 1 and 2, as well as adding some extra information and knowledge about how to use the queries and different variables or math operations in like an efficient way in your creations. So if you watched this whole video, you probably won't have to check out my part 1 or part 2 video about FMBE, but I still highly recommend doing so because I might have forgotten some information in this video. But anyways, let's get straight into the video. So let's first start with the setup. So first up here, this is completely optional, but this is to mute the Fox's noises. So we have this and this. You guys can just pause the video, of course, and I'll try to get an actual, like, a world download for this whole world and put it in my Discord so y'all can actually just download it instead of actually typing everything down. But as of now, if there's no world download or anything like that, you guys might just have to type it on your own. But that's that, and now for the actual, this is fully needed. This is the basic setup. So first up here, this just TPs the Fox itself, so it doesn't move around. And then here we just give the Fox the tag block, and then it gives it a course block, and then invisibility. This is kind of like the basic of what you kind of need. And now for the basic animations. So the first one is this one, and then we have this one right here. Kind of gets all the variables set up and work, so you can scale it and like size it properly and everything like that, as well as like position it properly. And then the next one here, we have this one. And this one, and this one. I'm just gonna go through these pretty quickly. You guys can pause. But this, after you've done this, you're basically done. And this is the only kind of setup version that you'll ever need. All the other ones are not really needed. This one is the main one that you guys are gonna need. So you don't really need to think about all the other ones. Only use this one. That's my recommendation. But anyways, let's get straight into the part 2 of the basic variables. Start out with the basic variables, where I'll be teaching y'all how to manipulate the size, position, or rotation of the Fox. So if you got your setup completely done, when you place a Fox, it should spawn a block like this. Now we can actually manipulate for example, the rotation of the Fox using this right here. So if I go into this command block, as you can see, it will rotate the Fox 50. And basically, we have 3 different rotation arguments. We have X rotation, Y rotation, and Z rotation. So if I click this button right now, as you can see, it rotated 50 in the X direction. As well as if we, for example, do in the Y direction, as you can see, it rotated Y 50. And then as well, you can do the same thing with the Z rotation. And keep in mind, it actually keeps the previous numbers that you actually did. So as you can see, it has all the rotations inside of it right now. Then we have position. Basically, this works like the squiggly lines. So for example, when it says v.z pos 50, it would actually move in the positive z direction, which is this way right here. So if I click this button, as you can see, move that direction. As well as, for example, I can change it to the X position, and as you can see, it's going to move forwards right there. And then you can move it up as well if you do in the Y direction. Boom. Pretty nice. And now we have base pos. This basically works like the carets that you already know from normal commands, and this is basically based off of the Fox's rotation. So we also have, of course, the 3 different versions, which is X, Y, and Z. So for example, if I click this button, it's going to move in this direction, and that is because the Fox is actually looking in this direction. So if I were to do minus, it's going to move behind the Fox instead of where it's exactly looking. And then you can, for example, do it in the X direction, as you can see, boom, as well as you can do it in the Y direction. And this will actually be helpful in some of the creations I'll be showing y'all later. Then we have the scale. So if we were to spawn a new block in, as you can see here, we have a few different, we have X, Z scale, we have scale, and we have Y scale. So let's first start out with the normal v.scale. So I set it to 2 right here, and as you can see when I press this button, it turns even bigger. You can choose this. You can choose the numbers to be however big you want, of course. I just chose 2 and 50 for the other ones because of no really specific reason. But for example, we can change the XZ scale to be like, I don't know, let's say like 6, and as you can see, it's going to be squished outwards like that. Let's just kill this guy real quick. As well as we can actually change the Y scale like this, and as you can see, it's going to get like tall. And a lot of y'all might be wondering, why is there no separate X and Z scale? There's actually a few commands that actually do that, but I believe it actually sacrifices the Y scale, and that is the reason why we just go with this for now. But anyways, let's move on to the next step. For future me here, a thing I did forget to mention is that you can create custom variables or variable names that can store values, but it kind of only does exactly that, which is storing values. So unless it's connected to the commands we typed out previously, or if they're actually in the Minecraft code files or files for animations, it probably won't do anything at all. Now, what is the difference between a temp and a variable? So basically the difference between the two is that a temp is actually, you can actually cross information from one entity to another, whilst the variable is only local to the entity. So to show you that it actually works like that, I'll be summoning a fox named A right here, as well as a fox named B right here. So if you go to this command block right here, this is going to set the fox named A's t.xrot to 50. So if I click this button, as you can see, nothing happens. But it set this guy's score to 50. That's just what you got to keep in mind right now. Then if you go to this other command block, this is going to set the fox named B's v.xrot to the t.xrot of this entity right here. So if I click this button, it's actually going to rotate 50 to the side, as you can see right there. And now to show you that the same doesn't work for v.xrot, so if I were to just do v.xrot equals 50, like this, and then I do in here v.xrot equals to v.xrot, it's actually just not going to work. So for example, if I were to put this to like 90, as you can see, nothing happens. Whilst if I were to put this back to temp and put this one right here back into temp, as you can see right here, it's actually gonna rotate, as you can see right there. I can put this to, for example, like this. Click this button. As you can see, fully works. Now with the queries. So I'll actually keep a documentation list in the description about all the queries you can use. But anyways, let's get straight into it. So let's first start out with the most important one, in my opinion, which is q.lifetime. And this is basically useful to keep a constant animation going. For example, if you want a block to constantly spin, this is your guy. So first up here, as you can see, I just set the fox's v.x rotation to be equals to the query.lifetime, and then I just timed that by 1000 to kind of get like a constant speed or like a fast speed on it. So if I were to, for example, spawn a fox in and then click this button right here, as you can see, it's going to spin insanely fast. As well, if I were to put it to 100, it's going to spin even slower. And by the way, if you're wondering why I got like a small block right there, that is because it actually spawned a baby fox instead of a adult fox, which is something you got to keep in mind, of course. Now we can do, of course, some other cool stuff with queries, like making it make the fox face the player. So if I were to summon an arm stand in the rotation, as well as a fox right here, and I flick this lever, as you can see, it's going to follow me around wherever I go, up and down. It looks pretty nice. And this is basically using temp rotation or temp scores. So basically, I save the arm stand's rotation using query.body rotation, and I save it as a temp score. And then I put that temp score inside of the fox's variable or rotation, as you can see right here. And this one here basically just TPs the arm stand facing the player. It looks pretty cool. Then next up, we have kind of like a cool running animation. And here I use quite a few different interesting queries. So for example, I use q.ground speed, and this basically just outputs the speed as a number. So you can actually make the running animation be kind of more drastic the faster you go. As well as I use q.lifetime, which I just explained y'all. As well as q.is sprinting, which basically it outputs a 1 if you're sprinting or a 0 if you're not sprinting. So if I click this button right here, as you can see, when I start running, it's going to get this cool animation. Or if I just walk, it's not going to give animation, of course, because I did the q.is sprinting. And depending on how fast I go, it's going to bop even more. So if I, for example, fly, which actually counts as running, as you can see, I'm going crazy mode right now, which is pretty cool. And then, let's check this off. And then next up, we have some interesting, kind of like a Quillbot, if you guys know that from like Garrymod. But basically, this is going to make the arms or the fox face the camera of the player. So if I just spawn in a fox and click this button, as you see, it's going to follow me around. As well as if I, for example, go into third person, it's actually going to follow my third person camera, which is quite interesting. And basically, every player is going to see you facing you, so it's basically client-sided, or facing the player. I mean. And then we have q.health. This basically outputs the health of the entity as a number. So if I were to, for example, spawn a fox in, and I click this button, as you can see, it's pretty big right now. If I were to punch the entity, which basically results of the entity to have like less health, it actually gets smaller. As you can see, until it actually just dies, which is pretty cool. And then we have a cool little jumping animation. Basically, if q.is is jumping is positive, it's going to give me like this cool jumping animation. As you can see, pretty interesting. But basically, in short, most queries just test for if something is true. Whilst there's a few others that actually do some different stuff. For example, facing the player, or q.lifetime, which basically just counts upwards like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But yeah, that's basically it for the queries section. So let's move on to the next one. Now I'll be kind of showing you how you can actually use this rotation example I showed y'all previously. So basically here we have, I'm going to make like a Herobrine guy.
Future me here, but keep in mind that this is a very easy and simple example that I'm showing y'all. But if you take it to extreme lengths, you can make some cool stuff like this with the storm Guppy Duck made.
So if I spawn in an arm stand in rotation like this, as well as have this lever on right there, pretty good. And now if I do summon, for example, a fox named I1, like this, and then I do another one named I2. As you can see, I fully widened out the eyes. It's actually going to follow me around pretty coolly. And this is basically using the rotation as well as some other stuff. So if we go into this command block right here, this basically does the rotation thing, of course, the normal stuff. And here, basically using the copied rotation of the arm stand, I also adjust the size as well as the X position, or the X base position. And this is very important to actually use base position in cases like this instead of actually just X pause, because this actually will do it according to the rotation. So it'll actually work properly and face you. And I did the same thing, kind of facing the player, as well as another animation for the other eye. And then over here, I just TP the foxes to the arm stand. Pretty simple. Probably the most y'all have been wondering about is basically how you can implement this, like the math as well as some creation examples. So let's go over to the beginning. So first up here we have math.random. You might have seen this from my previous video, but if you guys have tested this out yourself, you probably know that if you press this button, it's just going to constantly spam a random rotation like 24/7. But if you just want something to be random once and only give like a random rotation once and not multiple times, you can actually do that as well by doing this instead. So if we were to spawn a fox this time, as you can see, it only does it once. And you can do this, for example, you can do this to any variable that you really want to do. You can do this to the Y rotation as well. You just gotta add that yourself. And yeah, this is basically how you can get the rotation random once
Alright, so future me here again. I know you've been seeing a lot of me, but basically, as you can see here, between the two parentheses, this is where you choose the ranges. So I chose minus 360 to 360, but you can choose whatever you want, technically speaking. For example, you can choose 1 to 2, and then you basically just type in 1 in the first bracket, and then 2 in the next one.
Which is pretty cool. As you can see right here, random rotation each and every time. Pretty nice. I'm just gonna kill these guys. Now, if you want, for example, something to grow and then stop after a certain size, you can use math.min. Basically, if I click this lever right here, as you can see, it's gonna stop when it reaches the size of 5, as you can actually see in this command block right here, where you basically change this number right here to whichever number you want it to stop at. And I just chose 5 because it's a cool number, so why not? But yeah, that's pretty much it for the grow stop. The next one here, this is basically smaller until it stops. So if I flick this lever, it's going to start out big, and it's going to be smaller until it hits a certain size, and then it stops. This is basically the opposite with math.max, and basically here the same number, you just adjust this number right here to whatever size you want it to stop at. The next one right here, I just call this heart, because it's kind of like a cool sin animation, where it kind of like moves out and inwards again, you know, like kind of like a heart you'll see right here. Pretty cool. But yeah, this kind of utilizes multiple things like math.sin, as well as a lot of other stuff. And as well, I forgot to say this, I have a list documentation about all the math variables as well, of course. And here we have a sin wave. As you see, I'll just be summoning a fox that is an adult, as well as this is the code I used, or the math I used for sin wave, where I basically use math.sin, as well as q.lifetime times p, you know, the usual stuff. And then if I flick this lever right here, as you can see, it's going to make this cool sin wave. And you can actually adjust the numbers if you want like a different type of sin wave, as well as, of course, if you want cos wave instead, you can just change this math.sin to math.cos, and you can get a little bit different, which I actually I can just show you guys right now. As you can see, pretty cool. But yeah, that's basically that. Pretty nice. And now here we have basically the smoke particle. If you guys remember from my waterfall video, I recommend checking that out. But basically, there's a lot going on here. For example, I use math.mod, as you can see on the top there, and that basically resets the animation or the timer when it's gone 2 seconds, as you can see right there. As well as I use a lot of other stuff. For example, I use let's just look at this math.clamp, where I basically clamp the value between two numbers, which is right here, is 0 and 1. So it can't go below 0 or above 1 in v.scale, which is pretty cool. So if I just spawn quite a few foxes like this, and I click this button right here, as you can see, we get this cool smoke animation. I know the quartz block probably isn't the coolest block to show this with, but yeah. And then I'm gonna just kill these guys, and then here we have this cool explosion animation. And this is basically from me and Guppy's collaboration. We made this. A lot of stuff going on here as well, just a lot of math, and basically it's gonna simulate like a cool explosion in physics. And actually, I need a fox named Debris, so let me just cut to when I get the fox. Alright, so now I finally have the fox, and now I can just press this button, as you can see right here. It's gonna like simulate some cool physics, which is pretty nice in my opinion. And now I can actually flick this off. Now for the time animation. Basically what I mean by this is actually gonna activate an animation after a certain amount of time. So for example, as you can see right here, I put it to a 5-second timer. So after 5 seconds, it's gonna run this cool little animation right here. So if I flick this lever, as you can see, after 5 seconds, it did that, as you guys can see. Let me do another one. Boom. Wait, was it 2 seconds? I think I set it to 2 seconds. Yeah, I set it to 2 seconds. So I can set this, for example, to 3 size. And it's going to do after 2 seconds. Boom. So basically how this works is this number right here, you can adjust the timer. Then this one right here is basically what number you want it to output before it reaches the specific amount of time. And this is basically what outputs after a specific amount of time. You can adjust that. That's basically the timer I made. And now for this cool door that Ray actually made for me way back. Shout out to him. But basically, using the position of the player, using Q.position, we can actually make this cool door when you get close to the armor stand. We also use a lot of other cool math operators like math.pow or math.square root and so on. But basically, if I flick this lever right here and spawn the fox, when I get close to this, it's going to just move upwards like that, which is pretty cool. And that was basically it for the different variables. Or, not the different variables, but the different cool math plus creation examples. So if y'all actually stayed this far throughout the video, I'll be giving you guys a little prize, which basically is going to be the explosion animation from my orbital laser. So here's the actual command for it. Quite a lot of stuff, of course. And here's the amount of entities I summoned. You can just pause the video at the commands. And then the final one right here. Now if we flick this lever, as you guys can see, we get this cool explosion animation, which is basically the same one I use for my orbital laser, except here I don't have the cool block palette as well as the cool sounds and all that. But this is the exact same, I promise y'all. As you can see, this is pretty cool. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.